What's up, Greenville? Back today talking all about ADUs. These are accessory dwelling units, a hot real estate topic here in Greenville, South Carolina, because our city just released its new zoning code. It's now officially in effect as of July 15th, 2023. So now that the new code is in effect, a lot of people are going to be wondering, am I going to see ADUs popping up everywhere? And should I build an ADU on my property? Let's break it all down. First and foremost, what is an ADU? If you don't know the acronym, it stands for Accessory Dwelling Unit. An accessory dwelling unit is something like a carriage house, a garage apartment, also known as an in-law suite. It's a separate detached structure on your property where it provides additional space and housing. So the city has now allowed these where they previously have not in some zones, but there are a lot of restrictions and you definitely need to make sure you understand these before taking on or adding an ADU to your home. So let's talk about some of those restrictions. First and foremost, go to my blog, bird.groupgreenville.com. We just put a post out today. We put some quick links to the new zoning modifications so you can find them and read them from the source directly. So check out that article. Now, a couple highlights I want to point out today in this video that I thought were noteworthy. One is going to be the total maximum size of living space is 1,000 square feet. There's also height restrictions, setback restrictions, and you need to owner occupy the primary residence the ADU is being built next to. So in other words, you can't just add a skyscraper in your backyard, and you definitely can't add a big apartment complex in your backyard either. You need to owner occupy the primary residence, and the ADU itself can't really be that large in the grand scheme of things. It's also based on a percentage of the size of the primary residence. So if you have a smaller home, that is going to restrict the size of the ADU you can actually build. It's always going to wind up being a smaller house than the house you're currently living in. You're not going to be able to just add a second house next to your 1,000 square foot home necessarily. So keep that in mind. Now, for my investors out there, there's probably a lot of people thinking, maybe I can add some more beds and baths and up my value and my cash flow. Well, remember that requirement. It's got to be owner occupied on the primary residence. So if this is a rental property you want to add an ADU to, you're probably not going to be able to do so. But you can use ADUs as income producing properties if you owner occupy the primary residence. An important detail here is that they need to be mid or long-term rentals. The city of Greenville still has, even with ADUs, the restriction in place preventing short-term rentals from being operated in Zone R. That's residential zoned areas. So don't think you're going to add an ADU and turn it into an Airbnb necessarily. But a long-term rental or a midterm rental could potentially work. Now, with all these restrictions, is it worth it? That's the big question on a lot of homeowners' minds. Here's the thing, because an ADU is probably going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to build, especially if you're building the structure completely from scratch. Some of you might be able to get away with converting a detached garage or some type of other detached structure you already have, as long as it meets all of the city's current zoning requirements around ADUs. That could be a cheaper option, but it's still going to be a pretty expensive project. But I do think we are going to see ADUs become more popular here in the city. And the reason I think that is because multi-generational housing, also sometimes referred to as stacking, where multiple generations of families are getting in together in one house under one roof, that's not always comfortable. Having that second space can really offer a lot more privacy and flexibility. So for example, if you have elderly parents and you want them to live with you but not with you, an ADU could be a really good option. And when you look at the cost of senior living facilities and additional housing in general for situations like this, an ADU could actually financially make a lot of sense. Not to mention, it is ultimately going to add more beds, more baths, more livable square footage to your home. So for a lot of residents, adding an ADU could be a great investment in their current home, but you gotta weigh out the options and most importantly, the cost of the construction. I would highly recommend ensuring that you use a licensed and very well qualified contractor if you want to tackle one of these projects, because they need to understand and interpret the zoning and restriction codes very carefully. You don't want to build and spend hundreds of thousands on an ADU and realize you have a bunch of violations to deal with. So make sure you proceed with caution. For more real estate tips, go to bird.groupgreenville.com.